working on the lines, and I remember.
All right. See, we get to start over. Uh, so we are here for our final session of the GAR contract session for 2025. Assuming, well, okay, for the first half of 2025, we'll probably do this again in the second half because, as is typical, there will be changes mid-year. But currently, we're running off the January 2025 contracts. Um, this session is the last session, and we are covering the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement and variations thereof. Let's get started. Um, since I don't have my splash screen slide deck up that has the disclaimer, I'll just say it so that Derek doesn't get confused. Is that I'm not an attorney. This is not an official legal interpretation. This is a broker's perspective. And if you need legal advice, seek it. I highly recommend that you talk to attorneys when you have deep, deep questions. As well, not all brokers, but for me anyway, I think broker best practice is you bring something to me that's not something I've done 800 times. I'm going to call an attorney and ask their opinion too, because I also am not an attorney and cannot give you that type of advice. So, all right. So, exclusive seller brokerage agreement. This has to be signed. This is not as confusing as the buyer brokerage, right? Like, because when does this have to be signed? You're
Bef-
muted, Derek. I saw you trying to answer, and I appreciate the effort. If you can unmute, he's trying. What if I ask to unmute? Does that help? Nope. Can't do it. Can't do it. God, I mean, that was your moment. Anyway, so I'm sure what Derek said was it had, oh wait, here he comes in the chat. This thing's in the way. I can't read it. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so that's not really the response I expected from you, but so I'm sure what he was trying to say was that you, of course, have to get this signed before you start marketing the property because you have to have a marketing agreement in order to market a property legally, right? Pretty straightforward. Now, what's interesting is that um, this doesn't, like, people don't get confused about how to sign this. But the question is, should you get it signed sooner than when you start marketing the property? All right. So we're going to get
Yes.
deeper into that
Yes.
in a second. Yes, the answer is
Yes.
yes. So we're going to get deeper into that in a second. And let's just keep going through the form and it will lead us in that direction, if that makes sense. All right. So exclusive brokers, seller brokerage engagement. I think it's super important you read this first paragraph and let people understand the big bold state law comment, not a bad thing to point out. Property identification, just the address, right? And the tax ID if you have it, which would be useful. And then let's get to the first fun part, legal description. So just like with the purchase and sale agreement, and just like anything else where there's a legal description, if you don't complete this, this contract is not viable. So it's very important that you put a legal description in that's sufficient to be used by attorneys. Again, this is not the document that's going to drive the closing, but it is the document that drives what you represent, right? Understanding what you represent. So it's very important that you put that in here. I am a big fan of the deed book page thing, just because that allows, just like I was in the purchase and sale agreement, it allows a lot less errors necessarily um, compared to the land lot piece. And then, of course, if you're doing a condo, you have to do section four, which gives much more description down below. Or can you use the deed book and page with a condo, Adam? Yes,
Yes,
you can. Okay. Seth, can you unmute?
I can.
Excellent. Look at you being the showing Derek up this morning. All right.
I'm technologically savvy. So for the deed book and page, I run into this most times that I write an offer for a condo. They have changed many times. And which one do I use? Do I use what's on the realist, or do I use what's in the paperwork that I get uh, from the listing agent? What do I use?
So that's a good question. If you're getting stuff from the listing agent, I would lean towards that. I hate to say that, but yes, I would lean towards that. But I would trust but verify. And I would look that up. And I would say, okay, when I pull it up, it shows this deed booking page. And maybe ask the listing agent, hey, is this correct or not? And then one of the other beautiful things is our brokerage in particular has a relationship with a law firm that will do a quick title search for you and do a preliminary, legal description find. So if you go to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking at Unit 318 in, um, the Metropolis or whatever," they can pull that current legal description deed book and page, or give you the actual legal description copy. Now, what's the benefit of doing that, Dan? I see you getting ready to chime in. I bet you're going to say it. Go ahead.
Well, I either ask for the warranty deed from when the seller's purchased, but if we go to what you were recommending, isn't that I always get the initials wrong, but Georgia County Clerk,
It's the
because Georgia. Thank you.
GSCCCCCCCCCCA dot
Yeah,
org or
because
whatever.
that's the
Dot gov
recorded.
or
That's the
whatever.
yeah, that's the recorded legal
It
description.
is.
So
But you have to have a
that's
paid
good.
account to be able to see that. And so you can do that through the brokerage and get that through the brokerage. But let's talk about one little thing that we kind of skip. So when we are working with buyers, how do we make sure that the buyer is a real person?
we we see them.
Okay, so we meet them in
We're like,
person.
we're
Great,
like,
they're a real
yeah,
person.
uh-huh.
Um, how do we make sure they are who they say they are?
You can check an ID.
You can check an ID.
Hmm.
How do we make sure they have the resources they say they have?
Call the lender.
We can call a lender. We can make sure they talk to a lender if they pre-approved with a lender and given their social security number and those sorts of things. That's a good level. We now have through Georgia MLS, I think it is, the ability to look up the phone number of somebody and get a quick background check. It's disturbing, actually. Try not to misuse it and look up your friends because you might find out stuff you don't want to know. But it does find out, like you can see criminal things, you can see financial issues, like all kinds of things in there. So that can be helpful. Because it's our duty as a buyer's agent to protect the listing and bring only people that are in that are functional, right? Well, even more important, when we're listing a property, it's our duty to make sure that the person we're talking to has the legal right to sell the property they're telling you they do. Now, that may sound really stupid, right? It may sound like, well, wait, that never, it's not a big deal. Oh no, it's a big deal. We've run across it. You get to closing only to find out that the son that's trying to sell the house doesn't actually own it. It's the dad with the same name, but missing a third or fourth or whatever after his name. And yeah, so that can cause some issues. And it's always good to figure that out up front. I will tell you a personal story. Many years ago, as the condo king, I sold a lot of condos, and I sold the penthouse at the gallery. No, not the gallery. The gallery's the new one next door, Phoenix.
Hmm.
Uh, and Absolutely gorgeous. Two-story penthouse, fabulous property. I brought the buyer, listing agent was difficult. We negotiated the whole thing. I got him to include furniture. I mean, just ripped him up one side and down the other, killing it. We get the inspection. Inspector calls me and says, "Hey, man, what's his name's check bounced?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's weird." Then I get the call from the brokerage. "Hey, that earnest money check bounced." What?
Oh,
Oops.
And then he disappeared off the planet, right? Like, and he never, but literally brought his family, took pictures. Like, I mean, we were all in and had been pre-approved, so to speak. Like, I don't know, I was young and innocent back then. And I was selling a $1 million condo, right? Like, I thought, let's do this. So just be wary that that does happen. So
what was the goal there?
we never
What,
figured it out. They didn't get anything out of it. Like, I mean, it's a super secure building. There's no way in hell they were ever getting back in. Um, I don't know, but we never understood why there, what the play was there, to go that far. Um, but yeah, it was very strange. All right,
one other thing, Brett, one other thing on the getting the legal description. At least you could find out who's on title.
correct.
Because sometimes there's an unnamed person, player
Yes.
to be named later.
And that's where you do that preliminary title search with the lawyer of your choice. They will help you understand that. They're not going to deep dive and find out that there's, 8 liens or some mechanic's lien or whatever. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they find that out in a preliminary search, which is good because it's better to address the fact that they owe more than you can sell it for up front, than to, run into that right before closing. Again, it makes you look bad. All right, let's talk about listing price and listing period. Listing price has to be a number, right? Pretty straightforward, an actual dollar amount. Commencement date of the agreement. So this is what we were talking about a little bit ago. Commencement date of the agreement. Think about it the same way as when you start working with a buyer.
Different shirt, but.
When does your requirement for being able to give advice start?
When you have a signed agreement.
When you have a signed agreement. Are you allowed to give advice prior to that?
Technically, no.
Technically, legally, no. Okay. So that is similar with a seller. If they're not a client, then you can't advise them. Like, you can talk generally about market and stuff, but if you're advising them specifically, which this is where we get ourselves in trouble, we go in and we say, "Hey, you need a fresh coat of paint. You need to refinish the floors. You need to yada, 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 need to," right? That's advising, isn't it? So you need to have a listing agreement in place. Now, most people get in the realm of, "Oh, well, I'll get it once we're finished. And I don't need to protect myself because they're going to go with me for sure." Well, I can tell you stories, not from me personally, but from other people, that they were working with them, got it all done. And of course, what happens? People notice that the house is getting worked on, neighbors start coming by. All of a sudden, neighbor wants to buy the house. Neighbor wants to buy the house. There's no listing agreement in place. Boom, they do a deal and you're done. So you want to make sure on two arms there. Legally, you have to allow yourself to advise them. And I would use that. I would say, look, in Georgia, the law says that I can't advise you unless we have a client relationship. So if we sign this, we get the client relationship. Now you're going to say, "Okay, but how do I know what the list price is if I haven't determined that yet?" What's the answer to that?
You can always amend it.
You can always amend it. Put a number, whatever number, put 100,000. It doesn't matter. Put a number and then amend it before the marketing date so that you aren't you start marketing it at whatever number you need it to be. So just put a ballpark. But don't put a range. Please don't put a range. Put an individual number, and then adjust it if necessary, right? Make your best guess and then go from there. Okay. You probably know what it needs to be. And then, you can leverage this as well, yeah, I put 300,000, but we probably could do 350 and they were thinking four. So, if you put three, they might be like, oh God, well, we'll come up. Let's see how it looks after you're done. Right. Like, let's go from there. Um, so that's the commencement date. The ending date is what date?
Pick a
Or
date.
you're muted. It can be any date past the commencement date. Okay. It can be the next day. It can be, in the old days, it had to be 90 days, but that rule went away. So it can be a week, it can be 2 weeks, it can be a year, it can be 2 years, it can be whatever you want it to be. So from that standpoint, put in that term. Now we get to marketing. Broker agrees to file this listing with the following MLS services. This is an exclusive agreement. What are the rules with FMLS? While we're on it, let's talk about it. If I do an exclusive listing, do I have to put it in FMLS?
Yes.
Yes, period, end of story. If I do an exclusive listing, I have to put it in FMLS. So always put FMLS in there because this is an exclusive listing agreement. Now, Georgia MLS, why wouldn't you put it in Georgia MLS? I don't know why you wouldn't. We're a member of both. I personally, I'm a fan of Georgia MLS. It has a lot more fields, although not everybody fills them out. But anyway, so you're just going to put the two MLSs in there. Delivery of the agreement to and listing with the MLS, it just says it'll be timely delivered. Obviously, there's obligations with FMLS. We're not going to talk about that right now, but we'll get to that in a different conversation. And
Brett,
here's your
hang
marketing
on a second.
commencement date. What's that?
Yeah, Brett, if I can, what about that? I can't even remember the name of it, where people have exclusive listings that are only in-house. Not that we're doing it, but isn't that
Um,
part of the marketing?
so technically, that is not that does not follow FMLS rules at the moment.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
a
Now,
there's a
People are
big
doing it.
argument about
people
that.
are doing it,
Mhm.
but that does not follow the rules. Like, you are breaking the rules if you are marketing a property prior to the marketing commencement date and you are letting people see it or any of those things. That's the key. The space between list commencement date and marketing commencement date is a listing preparation period. It is not a pre-marketing period. It is not a ability to show your friends or neighbors. It is a pre-marketing period. It is not something that you're supposed to be letting people in the property. You can put it in FMLS as coming soon if it's within 21 days, which hopefully it is. And that gets you a little bit of market exposure. But again, per FMLS rules, you're not allowed to show the property. Now, does that mean that a buyer cannot bring you an offer? No, it doesn't. I can bring anybody. I could right now write an offer on Adam's condo. It's not listed, but I could have bring him an offer. All I got to know is the address and a little bit of legal information, deed book and page, and I'm good to go, right? I can write an offer. It could be for $1, it could be for whatever. And I'm going to present that. That doesn't mean that you can let people in the property. So the marketing commencement date needs to be when you're going to go live, letting people see the property. Okay. The second part of that is this little can move the date up or back. use that. Like, especially if you're having somebody do some work, make the marketing date earlier so that they're having to try and hit the date, and then give yourself a 7 day window to be able to push it back, or a 14-day window to be able to push it back if you have to, because they didn't get there in time. But give them a deadline to try and get done, right? And at this point in the market, we are in the spring, coming in heavy to the spring. Should people be getting on the market sooner or later?
Sooner.
Soon.
Sooner,
Sooner.
right? Boomer sooner. Sorry.
I have a question, Brett.
Yeah.
Adam had sent us over a FMLS registered versus coming soon status quick guide.
Mhm.
And in that quick guide, it says, can offers be presented and accepted while in the status? And they both say no.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, but from a legal perspective, you can't stop somebody from presenting an offer to you. Just like I can present an offer to Adam, even though his property is not listed, you can't stop another agent from presenting an offer to you. And under Georgia law, if somebody presents an offer to you as a representative of the seller, what do you have to do with it?
Present
But if
it
that
timely.
house isn't technically marketed or on market,
But it's
should you not
still,
tell them, like, no, you have to, like, you can write the offer, but we won't be submitting, I guess you just tell them we're not gonna review until after on market date?
I mean, technically, you're supposed to legally present it to your client. What most of the time the recommendation is going to be is if there's so much demand for this property as a coming soon, and this person presented an offer without seeing it because we didn't let them in, what do you think is going to happen when we open it up to the public?
Right.
Right? And that's your seller's choice. I get that FMLS rules kind of try to limit that, and I appreciate that from they're trying to keep that in-house trading from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if somebody brings an offer, you legally have to present it.
So what if I present it and my seller accepts it? Could I
Mm.
potentially get a fine from FMLS for,
I haven't really seen that. You just need to make it active, change the marketing date, and then make it under contract.
okay,
I mean,
So
it's not
it's under
ideal.
contract.
It's not what our desire is.
right,
But again, the seller, it's their house. They get to make that decision. And they don't have to abide by FMLS rules, right? Like that's not them. We,
right.
but they don't.
So
Okay.
that was going to be my question. They're not bound by the same rules that we are. So if they're talking to their neighbors and their neighbor says, my brother-in-law wants to buy your house, we're not in trouble for that because we didn't market it.
Correct. As long
Okay.
as you're not marketing it and showing it to people, you're not breaking that FMLS rule. You can do pre-marketing stuff, right? Like the coming soon model in FMLS allows you to not show the property, wrong word, allows you to expose the property to potential buyers and potential agents with buyers, but it doesn't allow you to show the property. So, but again, in a hot market, which we kind of are in some places, but not as much, but take a year or so ago, if a coming soon property came on and it was in the market that your buyer wanted, you would probably put an offer without seeing it. I mean, that there was just not enough inventory, right? And as long as you have due diligence, why does it matter? Right? Like you're going to get to see it anyway. So you're going to try. Adam, was that your comment or you got another
I
one?
think it's more just needing clarification. So I get a new listing. They sign my agreement today, but they
Mhm.
say it's not going to be ready for 2 more weeks. We need to paint and clean.
Yeah.
What I've been telling them is the benefit to you signing this agreement now instead of in 2 weeks is I'm going to put your listing on my silent inventory list and start kind of a whisper campaign to maybe other agents. So is that falling under the same category of marketing commencement date being today if they sign it, so I can start that, or two?
No. So think about the coming soon category in FMLS. So I would say instead of saying if they're going to be ready in 2 weeks, instead of saying it's going to be in my whisper campaign, I'm going to say I'm going to put it in the MLS. as coming soon. So agents with buyers can see that it's going to be available in 2 weeks. You're sure you're going to hit 2 weeks? Yep. Okay, great. So that's a hard and fast date, which is good to put, it makes them actually finish it. And then you put it in the system in FMLS, you put it in as coming soon. But you do not allow showings during that 2 weeks because the property's not ready. It's not in its best condition. You're going to take a few pictures, but probably not all the pictures because it's not ready yet, right? Like you're going to try and put a couple pictures that are pretty of something, but you're not going to put all the pictures in because you don't have the property ready. If the property is ready, you just put it on the market. You wouldn't do coming soon, right? So that's the path that I would take there. When that time period expands beyond 2 weeks, and now it's a month or 2 months or whatever, for whatever reason, because that does happen, right? Like, I mean, I talked to one of my neighbors who's working with one of our agents. I was getting free landscape rocks from him. And he was like, yeah, we're moving, we're getting the house ready. And I'm like, oh, when are you going to sell? Oh, like this summer because we have to wait until something, something. And I was like, okay, like there should be a listing agreement in place. And then the marking date should be 2, 3 months later. Now that one I wouldn't put in as coming soon because you can only do 21 days, I think. So, that's the thing. The registered listing, you can put it in as a registered listing. You're supposed to put it in as a registered listing under FMLS rules. There's issues with their registered listing, the way it responds with listing date and sometimes, but that can be worked through. But the key is the marketing commencement date is the date that you start allowing people to see it.
Okay, one more question then, Brett.
Yep.
In the scenario where the sellers don't need to abide by FMLS rules, the question I think from Laura was, okay, so the neighbors see that you're getting your house ready and they start talking and they said, yeah, I've got a brother or cousin wants to see it. And they let him in. What if the sellers let him in before?
I mean, you can't stop people from letting people in their house.
But what does that do to us?
What that does to us, if we have a signed listing agreement, is that when the brother brings an offer, we represent the seller and negotiate on their behalf. If we don't have this agreement signed and we're just helping them get ready and we're waiting to sign the agreement for when it's ready to put on the market, when the brother comes, what happens to us?
We're out.
We're out, right? And so that's where getting the commencement date from the time that you start advising them, and that's the way I would position it. Going back to Adam's comment. Look, I need you to sign this listing agreement today because I want to start giving you the value of my professional advice today. Most of the win in a listing happens before we put it on the market, right? How we position it on the market, how we present it to the market makes all the difference in the world. So it's really important that we do the things that we need to do. And I can't really help you with that if I don't represent you. Because that's legal, professional, under the law, that's professional advice. And I have to have a client relationship for that. Does that make sense? All right. Let's see if we can get through the rest of this in the next. All right, compensation. Let's see, from one difficult section to another. It's not a difficult section. This is pretty straightforward. So compensation to the seller's broker. Seller's broker agrees to pay, seller agrees to pay the seller's broker the following at closing. This is the amount that they're going to pay you. Okay? I'm a big fan of they pay you your side. Whatever you want to get paid on your side. And then on the C section, where are they wanting to pay the buyer's broker? Section 1, which is the not initially offering compensation, but marketing the seller's open to receiving offers with seller compensation to the buyer's broker. I love that, except, and this is the big except, if your seller thinks that they're going to pay X amount of total commission, and that's not what buyer's agents expect, When those offers come in, what number is going to be on the buyer agreement, right? It's going to be higher than what the seller expects. And that's harder to negotiate. I would rather, if you're saying that it's going to be a lower number, let's go ahead and just say it's going to be a lower number. That way I can tell the buyer's agents it's a lower number, and they can still submit offers with the higher number, right? Because that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing in the market. We haven't seen commissions adjust in any dramatic way. So, just be aware. I you can do it the old school way where you take the full commission and then you share it. I prefer the seller pays it directly because that's what happens at closing anyway. But then there's the whole caveat of, well, what happens if there's an unrepresented buyer and all those sorts of things, which we aren't going to delve into today. We'll cover that on a Word on the Street Wednesday or a case study going forward, because that's a deep, deep topic that needs a whole session. So any quicker questions about compensation? I'm not trying to glaze over. We've just talked about it a lot, right? So separate lease compensation, obviously, if you're not going to help them lease the property, you can just put NA in there. Protected period. Anybody want to put less than 180 days? I don't. I like to put 180 days because I want to make sure it's painful. Now, does that mean that if they list with somebody else? No, it doesn't, but it is what it is. Agencies and brokerage, again, this is which ones you offer or don't offer. I prefer not to do dual agency, but be aware that that is legal and you may be able to do it. Of course, if you mark that you can do it, you need to get their consent on whether they're willing to let you do it. Lead-based paint disclosure. Hey, look at this is redundancy number 4. This is going to say that the property was built prior to 1978, and they're going to need to complete a F316, which, by the way, becomes an exhibit to the listing agreement. So I'm going to get the listing agreement filled out, and then I'm going to do a lead-based paint disclosure later. Ain't a thing. They need to fill out the lead-based paint disclosure when they're signing the listing agreement. Okay? It's not the property disclosure where they have to answer the 1,000 questions. That doesn't. The lead-based paint disclosure needs to be filled out and added here as exhibit whatever. Okay? Everybody got that? And Adam, we thought we weren't going to talk about lead paint today. Special circumstances. This is an excellent section for asking the questions. Hey, do any of these situations apply to you and the sale of this property? Because if you ask that direct question and they're getting ready to get divorced, they're probably going to say it. If you don't ask that direct question and they're getting ready to get divorced, are they going to tell you? Maybe. Maybe not. If they get divorced while it's listed, or they start divorce proceedings officially while it's listed, what does that do to your listing? It means you can't close it. Because now we have to have a judge sign off on the contract and all that kind of stuff. So things you need to know. Same thing with bankruptcy. If they file bankruptcy 2 days after they list the property with you, you ain't selling it. Not soon, anyway. You might in the future, but there's a lot more hoops you got to jump through. So just ask the questions. Negotiations, obviously, one of the values that we as professional agents, experienced agents bring to the table is our ability to negotiate. So hopefully they're always allowing you to negotiate on their behalf. And then, of course, these are all the things that go into it. Because we yabbered so long on each of the things, I think we've talked about most of what's in here, but I highly recommend you spend some time walking through these and making sure that you understand what they are, all the different terms and things. Just like any part of the contract, I highly recommend you read it at least once a year from cover to cover, because that way you make sure that you miss anything or whatever, right? Talks about notices, talks about our duties and the seller's duties. talks about defaults and how that works, and all of those sorts of things. List of brochures, just like with a buyer brokerage agreement. Use these. It's important. ABCs of agency should always be checked because again, you're giving that out as, party favors whenever you host a dinner reception, whenever you go to the bar, you're handing it out to friends and family. I mean, this is the ABCs of agency. We want everybody to understand how agency works. And then of course, lead-based spam pamphlets, all these other things. Unless you happen to know, I'm not sure the buying agricultural land near a military base. If you're listing something near a military base, obviously you'd want them to understand the limitations on their sellability. But other stuff, distressed properties, that sort of thing. You have your legal description exhibit. So if you get a legal description from your attorney, you can attach it here. And lead-based paint exhibit. If it's built prior to, you need to do that. And we didn't talk about retainer fee, but we've talked about that in the past. If you are charging a retainer fee, you need to attach the 149 that goes with that. Does anybody want another week to go deeper into other listing scenarios? Okay.
No.
No.
Can we go back to the compensation thing real quick? If the sellers say that they want a total commission and we don't want to do a co-op commission, which of the forms that we offer, or the sellers offer to the buyer broker, would you recommend?
Okay, so this is a publicly visible video, so I'm not going to speak in specific numbers.
Okay.
But if I say, the seller says, look, I'm willing to give you 8 bananas to sell the house. What you do with that 8 bananas is up to you. I don't care if you get it all or if you share it with the other side, whatever. Then you can put 8 bananas up here. Hold on a second, Victoria. You can put 8 bananas up here, and then you can put down here that the seller's the compensation out of the compensation paid by the seller to the seller's broker. And you can put 4 bananas, you can put 3 bananas, you can put 2 bananas. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever number you agree to and the seller agrees to, that you're willing to share your bananas with the monkey next to you, so to speak. But if you want to hold firm, the other way you can do it is you can say, all right, I'm going to agree to share my bananas equally. So if your seller's willing to pay 8 bananas, I'm going to put 4 bananas up here, and I'm going to put 4 bananas down here, and I'm going to mark that the seller is going to pay it instead of me, instead of the brokerage.
Right. So there are 2 forms, correct, for that scenario, or just
you can
one?
do either of those. Yeah, you can do either of those. We're not talking about how you're going to tell people about that, if that's what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, I mean, if the sellers say, we'll offer the buyer broker X, whatever it is, which is the preferable form to just let the other side know that?
Oh, well, that's a whole different conversation.
Okay.
Let's cover that. So the answer that you said earlier is not no, it's yes. We want to dig deeper into some of the other forms that go into listing.
I stand corrected.
So not to, push you backwards, but yes, I do think we need another week because there's a lot to the details of this. And so we will extend out one more week, and I'll make sure that the Zoom link works and all that good stuff, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. I just extended this, but
no, I think everybody else wanted it extended too, or at least some people. I saw a couple of nods.
I wanted to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Victoria, did you have a question that I cut you off from?
No, I was trying to swap to a phone call. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. No worries. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for coming, and we will see you again next Friday when we do the continuation of the listing brokerage agreement and the affiliated forms. Because there are some affiliated forms. I know, Seth, you're so excited. It's good. There are some affiliated forms that Dan was alluding to that we need to talk about. and need to make sure you understand. So we will go from there. Thank you guys for coming. And
Thank
we
you.
will see you
Brett,
next week.
can Center add that to the calendar for next week?
Yes, I will make sure that happens.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.